the co-founder of Be Well, Building Exponential Wellness. And this workshop is all about discovering your voice and owning your narrative. And so I'm excited to have one of my dear friends, Joi-Marie McKenzie Lewis here, who is the Deputy Editor of Entertainment at Insider and also the author of The Engagement Game. And I will toss it over to you.
Thank you, friend. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you, Danielle, for the invitation. And this has just already been such an amazing day. And I know there's been just yoga and centering. And so hopefully after your mind is clear, your heart is clear, we can then sort of talk about speaking to other people and getting other people's messages across. And so before I share my screen, I just want to get a sense of why everyone is here, because I know this workshop is twofold. It's not only about journaling and owning your voice, but it's also writing a book. So by a show of hands or in the chat, just sort of tell me why you're here today. Are you here because you want to just want some motivation for journaling, or do you want more information to write a book? And that would sort of help me move through my presentation. So are we book writing? Or are we journal writing? And feel free to like unmute yourself or put it in the chat so that I know both. Okay, Donald is saying both. Respect to that. I know it's hard.
I'm starting journaling, so.
Perfect. And is it, how do you pronounce your name? Just so I got it right.
Zathia.
Zathia. Thank you, Zathia.
Hello, everybody.
And then Nakia, and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, says journaling. Danielle says both. Okay, awesome. So that definitely helps me. And I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get started. Okay. All right, and everyone can see that, right? Just nod your head, because with this open, I can't see the chat anymore. So I'll just be asking you to nod your head, give me some thumbs up, just smile real big. That's how I'll know. And I know Danielle will help me. That's sort of how I know if you're with me. All right. So how many of you, by a show of hands or thumbs up, know what happened in America in the 1850s? Pop quiz. Tanina shaking her head, no child. She said, I don't got no idea.
I wasn't ready for this.
Anybody? Do you have a sense of sort of what we were going through in the 1850s? Oh, Donald raising his hand. All right. All right. Yes. You'd be surprised, but most of you probably do know what happened in 1850s America. And it's really thanks to a person who had the audacity to write his life down. And that man's name was Solomon Northup, right? So you've heard of the Oscar-winning film, 12 Years a Slave, right? Yep. Zathia shaking her head, Kadada shaking her head. I love that name, Kadada, by the way. So you sort of know what happened in 1850s, all because one man decided to have the courage and the audacity to write his life's experience down. And it really goes to show just how important the power of one story is. And because Solomon, who, if you saw the movie, child, I ain't read the book, but I've seen the movie. So if you've seen the movie, that you know that Solomon was a freeman. He was born to a freed slave and a free Black woman in the 1800s. And he got captured back into slavery for 12 years on plantations in Louisiana for 12 years. And so he was able to free himself. But I guess the point of that story really is, and what it hits home for me, is that the only reason we know about his story is because he journaled. He had a diary and he wrote down his experiences. And, you know, I don't know Solomon, but I do believe that part of our experience as Black people, especially because oftentimes we're not believed, right? People want us to prove how we feel, our existence, what we're going through. I do believe that part of the reason why he wrote his experience down was so that he could tell other people, warn other people, enlighten other people, and sort of activate his community. And that is what journalism, that is what writing has always been for me. So to give you a little bit of background on myself before we dive right in, I am a 5th generation writer. So my great-grandfather was a journalist. He founded the Afro-American newspaper. It's still in circulation today. My grandmother was an entertainment editor. My mother has 6 books, and then here I am. And so writing for me is more than just, scribbling down on a piece of paper. I was sort of brought up to believe that it's our mission as Black people, especially, to document our lives, because if we don't do it, somebody else will, and they'll get it wrong. They always say that history is written by the victorious. History is written by the winners. And I believe that I'm a winner. And I believe that our people, our community, we are winning in so many ways. And there's so many ways that we're not, right? But if we each have the ability to write our experiences down, I do believe we can change the world. And so, yeah, so these are just some of my favorite writers that have each sort of found their place and found their voices. And it's not an easy task. Like you say, oh, I want to journal or I want to write, but we're all here because we know that's not easy, right? And so how do we then find motivation, keep motivated to write our stories down? And I just want to, I'm opening my screen so I can see more of you in your little square. So give me a second. All right, now I can see all of you, perfect. So how do we start? I like to start with the why of everything. It sort of brings into focus, why we're doing what we're doing. And so journaling, if you're here because you want to journal and make a real commitment to it, especially as we enter 2021, which I just pray is a better year. Well, the good news is that journaling reduces stress. For me, I've journaled as a practice since I was 8 years old. It's how I started writing my book because I had so much material already. And so for me, it's a practice. I usually do it when I just want some alone time and I want to clear my mind. Perhaps I've had a stressful day, and because I don't want to curse anybody out, I write it down, so it's a stress reducer. It creates clarity, whether on a situation that you're going through maybe, right? And so you're writing it down, you're sort of detailing how it went. And through the method of writing it down, and I'm old school, I like to actually write sometimes. I'll tell you why I stopped doing that in a second, but the old school way of just writing it down sometimes just sort of creates this clarity about a situation or about how you're feeling. I remember in college, I was journaling, and I was just going through a rough time. I'm a bad driver. My license got suspended, child. And I was on campus. I couldn't go anywhere. And I just remember looking back at my diary like, wow, I'm really kind of upset. Oh, am I depressed? But I wasn't even aware of it in my conscious mind because I was just going to class, not going nowhere, being stuck in the dorms because my license is suspended. But it really took me looking back and reflecting on what I had been writing down to be like, yo, you've been upset for months. So it creates clarity, right? It strengthens the mind. It creates intentionality. I believe in intentionality about everything. Every year, I'm one of those people who does vision boards, right? And creates intentions for the year, intentions for the moment, intentions for my job, intentions for my family, for my children. Well, I only got one child so far, but intentions for my child. I really believe in that because not only does it sort of set the goal, set the mark, but it helps you get there. And I think writing down your goals is just such an important practice when you want to practice intentionality and when you want to talk about achieving your goals. So journaling definitely helps you reach your goals. I don't know how many people are spiritual or religious in here, but I was raised by a pastor, so forgive me. And so in the Bible, it talks about writing it down and making it plain, right? And so there's something in the art of writing something down, writing your goals down, that somehow helps you manifest them. It's definitely a manifestation technique. And story time, this is why I don't write down I don't write in my journal anymore, because my mother, right before I moved to New York, she bought me a 5-year journal. And in this journal, you were not only supposed to just talk about yourself, but also write down your 5-year goals. And it was a lovely present. Thank you, Ma. So I'm writing down, I did the exercises in the book, left the book at home, moved to New York, forgot about it. It wasn't until my mom called me up one day like, hey girl, I found your journal. Wait, what? Read the whole thing, child. My mom is nosy. That's why I don't write it down no more. Now I do it online. But she said, well, I read your journal. I said, what'd you say? Huh? Excuse me? She said, yeah, I read it, and you'd be surprised. Every goal, I know Kadada, I can't believe it either, but she's nosy and she's been that way, and I am too. I get it honest, so that's why I'm a journalist. So she said, well, I read it, and you won't believe it, but everything you wrote down 5 years ago has come to pass except for one thing. And I said, well, what did I write? I forgot about it. I said, well, what did I write down? She said, oh, you wanted to move to New York. You did that. You wanted to work in journalism. You did that. And there were some other things that I can't remember. And I said, well, what's the one thing that hasn't happened yet? She said, well, you said you wanted to get married and have kids. But, at the time I was only 25. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm not even there anymore. But it just was proof that writing those goals down and journaling about them sort of helped me internally create a path to reach those goals. So that definitely works. And then it just improves your writing, right? If you do something enough, you'll get better at it. All right. So if you haven't started journaling yet, or maybe you have and you want like just some tips on how to do it, just really be like tunnel vision with it. Here's how to do it. Like I said, I love just writing it down. There's something about it that just like changes like the cosmic energy. And so buy a journal that you actually like to look at, that looks pretty. I'm sure like many writers, I have tons of half-filled journals on this bookshelf. That's okay though, because I just keep buying them because I like to look at them. I like just the hope and the anticipation that I might write and fill it up. But I buy a journal that you just love to look at. I also would suggest, if you're like me or like my mama and you're worried about people reading what you're writing down, go online. Diaryland.com is one that I've used since high school. I still use it. Sometimes I get nervous though when a website is owned by someone else and I'm like, oh my gosh, is everything going to be lost? So I've started the process of transferring all of that to a Google document. I don't think knock on wood, I don't think Google's going anywhere anytime soon. So it's become sort of my trusted source on journaling. So, just take it online, put it in a cloud so that you never lose it. Always make sure your journal is organized. You're going to want this when you want to look back and read it. So create a date. And I like to create a title as well. Everyone doesn't do that, but sometimes when you put a title on it, it sort of like just automatically takes you back to like what you were thinking, that place. And it's like a helpful note for me. And so titles have been lyrics to songs I liked at the time. Titles have been, I hate you, or just a whole bunch of like, it could be anything. But titling definitely helps. Always keep it a buck, keep it 100, be honest with yourself. Why not? Like, no one's going to see that this is an exercise just for you. So I know a lot of times we wear the mask, we're pretending to be okay. You don't really have to do that here. It's very freeing. You can just, keep it 100, keep it honest with yourself. And I have a thing where I'm trying not to curse, but I curse in my journal, so like, I'm my real authentic self. And I'm not trying to be anyone or better myself necessarily. I just want to document how I feel. And if you're stuck, and that's happened to me plenty of times, I sometimes go to use journal prompts. And you can find journal prompts anywhere. You can literally Google journal prompts. They're also, there's different like types of journal prompts. So you can Google journal prompts for Black people, journal prompts for women, journal prompts for the pandemic, journal prompts for self-care. There's tons of different categories for them. And I wrote a few down here. And if y'all are down, I hope you guys are because you're here, I would love for us to sort of do this first journal prompt right now together. So whether you have it on your smartphone, you can just use the Notes app to write something down, or maybe you have a pen and a piece of paper. But I see Linda looking for hers. Let's take a good, I'll say 4 minutes. I think we could do this in 4 minutes. And let's do the first journal prompt. I could flourish if. I'm going to do it too. So let's take 4 minutes and write our thoughts down. All right, I'm going to put myself on mute. We'll be back.
Finish up with the track we were on. Joy, can you say the prompt again?
Absolutely. So the prompt is, I could flourish if. So what are those things that you wish you had, you wish you didn't have? I don't want to lead anyone anywhere, but yeah, so I could flourish if. You have about 2 more minutes. Thirty seconds. All right. How did that feel, you guys? And actually, I found a way that I could see the chat while screen sharing. So how did that feel? Write it down in the chat or just unmute yourself if you were brave enough to share. Tina said, great. Tina, is that your real name, girl? Are you Beyonce's mama? Tell us the tea.
The same thing what I saw.
Is that Miss Tina? Listen, don't get me excited.
Come to my workshop.
Do not get me excited. So Thea said that was refreshing. That's really, really good to hear. Okay, awesome.
It felt like just like an unloading, like just to, you know.
That's beautiful. Kidada said it was eye-opening. And is anyone brave enough to maybe read what they wrote down? Look, Kidada is laughing like, ha, 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 you thought. How about I start? And this is no pressure at all. If y'all are like, nah, mind your business, totally fine. But I wrote down, I could flourish if I had more time to think. I'm always going, running, organizing, thinking, doing, saying yes, saying no. I could flourish if I had more time to myself. Life is hard and it's getting harder, but I know that I could flourish if I had the opportunity to catch my breath. And that's just real talk with the pandemic and no childcare. That's how I'm feeling right now. But anybody else? want to read what they wrote?
Yeah, I can share.
Awesome. Nakia and then Donald. Oh, wait, is that Tina? Sorry, Tina.
Yes. So I have, I could flourish if I stop having fears. I have issues of doubting myself a lot when I know I can do it. I have fears. Sometimes there's a lot of negativity circulating in my head and around me. I can't help it at times, but now I am recognizing the problem. I want to fix it. In order to flourish, I need to believe more in myself. No doubts or negativities, just creating a positive element around me.
You preaching, Tina. I love it.
Thank you.
Donald, and I think Nakia wanted to share too. So let's go to Donald and then Nakia.
Sure. I could flourish if I remained consistent and on schedule. I could flourish if I lived each day as if the future were already past, worked effortlessly and walking in my purpose. I could flourish if I remained on topic, on brand, and on time. Sometimes I misbehave and break my own rules. I should be resolute.
Donald, you got bars. Let me find out.
Be out in the streets.
Yes, I love that. Nakia.
Right. Hello, everyone. I wrote, I could flourish if I loved my job and was motivated to do it every day instead of doing it out of obligation and the need to have an income.
Word. And I think that's so relatable right now. But thank you all for sharing. I really appreciate that. And so take these prompts with you or feel free to Google more prompts. It definitely sort of helps drive your thoughts, right? All right. So let's switch gears to book writing and just remind me, show of hands of who is interested in writing a book. It could be tomorrow you want to write it, years later you want to write it. Okay, cool. So yes, I see you there, young girl. I'm waiting for you, Danielle. But yeah, so writing a book is hard. I told Danielle I am writing my second book now, literally. And so a lot of these things that we're about to sort of go over are true things that I I'm literally doing right now. And I write at this table. And I don't know if I put this on one of the slides, but like writing in a place that is clean, aesthetically pleasing, that if you need that, right? Like for me, I'm a Libra, so I like pretty things. I like harmony. It needs to be like a good space. I need to see some green, some flowers. So definitely like be mindful of your space. Yes, Tanine is like, yes, yes, you got to have good energy. You got to have good vibes around you in order to birth that story, right? That is going to carry us through for hundreds of years. I remember one of the reasons why I wrote my book, and it's called The Engagement Game, and it's literally detailing my 5-year relationship with a man who I wanted to marry desperately at the time. But hindsight is 2020 and a blessing. And so I started the process of writing that book because I was journaling. And I had no intention of writing about that at all. Yes, it's on Amazon. But I had no intentions of writing that book. I was literally just journaling because he had frustrated me for another time. And 20 pages, I sort of looked up like, wow, that was a lot. Like and that felt good, that this feels like it could be a book. And I literally, cleaned it up and took those 20 pages and gave it to an editor who was like, yes, we want to buy this. So whether you just want to journal or whether you have dreams of writing a book one day or tomorrow, like just by journaling sort of can open you up to that possibility. So I always like to start with the why, right? So why should I write a book? Well, for me personally, like I've always said, us as Black people especially, we have to own our narratives. We have to be the ones to tell our stories, and we have to write them down. We forget, right, that so much of our culture and who we are comes from the art of oral storytelling. That's where we come from. That's what our ancestors have done. That's what our forefathers did. But because we are now living here in this America, there is something about writing our stories down. A lot of times we don't hear Black women's stories, especially or they're being co-opted and told by like white people behind the scenes. Like, it's just super important for us to be able to tell our own stories to make sure that they are the most authentic. So we're not only telling our stories, we're making history. It's why we know about Solomon Northup's story, right? That moment in history, we now know what enslavement was like in the 1850s because of him. And so I'm heartened by the fact, you know, my book is in the public library system in New York. So I know that hopefully it'll stay there, right? But, you know, 100 years from now, if they want to know, what was it like for a 20th century woman, Black woman, they'll know because I wrote it down. So I love that fact, right? It also creates a sense of community. One of the side effects that I didn't quite see when I first wrote my book was that there were going to be so many women sharing their stories about relationship problems, the art of getting engaged, because I do believe it's an art, for better or for worse, talking about marriage. And these were women who were in their teenage years to women who were 60 years old coming up to me saying, thank you for writing this, because I too had no idea what the hell I was getting myself into. So it really gave me this sense of community where women and myself were sort of opening ourselves up to each other to figure life out, because no one knows what we're doing, right? It also increased my credibility as a writer. Like, I'm a writer, that's my job. But something about putting an author in front of you, people like it. It's just a fact. So whatever topic you're writing about, like, you could be writing a memoir like I did, or maybe your job is, I don't know, I'm just looking at the light in front of me, right? So maybe you are a light fixer. So you want to write a book about lights. Once you have that book about lights, people are going to come to you because now they're like, oh, you wrote a book about lights? You must be an expert about lights. Come talk about, you know what I mean? So it definitely helps give you a sense of credibility. And of course, writing a book does take months. So it should improve your writing for sure. All right. How do I write a book? Number one question, right? Yes, it is important to pass the baton. Tanine says, yes, for sure. So the first thing about how to write a book, and if you have questions, you guys, please put them in the chat. I don't want this to just be me talking to you guys. Feel free to interrupt me. I don't mind. All right, checking our time. We got good time. The first thing you want to do is to ideate. Figure out what your book is going to be about, because you will be talking about this book for years. Another thing that I did not realize when I wrote a book, people are going to be asking about your book at the baby shower, at church, on your job, your mom. Like, you're going to always have to explain and explain and explain what your book is about. So you really want to make sure it's an idea that you care about, that you don't mind telling everybody and the postman about it, because you're going to have to do that time and time and time again. So definitely figure out what that nugget is. And I always, when people are like, well, I don't know what to write a book about, like, I don't know, I always recommend, like, write what you know, right? Like, write the thing that only you can write. What is something, whether it's your experience, your expertise, don't try to write something that you don't, that you're not passionate about. Write what you know intrinsically. That sort of helps. Like, I knew I could write a book about being frustrated about not getting engaged, because that was me. That was my story. And that's what all my friends were talking about. So that came easy. So once you know what your book is about, I always recommend, this isn't here, but I always recommend going on Google and figuring out, are there similar books around yours? Trust me, there will be similar books. It's not a big deal. But you want to kind of see what books are already out there. You can probably see who published them, right? So now you have an idea of where you could possibly pitch them. You could probably see who the editors were for those books. It's just really a good exercise. I would recommend you picking 5 to 10 books that are already in the marketplace that are similar to your idea. So you can see, like, what are the titles? How are they titling things? I'll be honest with you, I hate my subtitle. I hate it. So I always say my book is called The Engagement Game, but the subtitle is, gosh, I even forget it. I've sort of blocked it out. Oh, Why I Said why I said I do. Wait, I truly forgot it. I don't like it. Okay, that's why I forgot. I blocked it out. But
Why did you choose to put a subtitle?
say it again, Danielle.
Why did you choose to put a subtitle?
Say that. I couldn't hear you, sweet.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
I said, why did you choose to put a subtitle?
So my editor chose it, and most books have a subtitle. It sort of just gives the reader extra information about what the book is about. And I truly do want to remember it. Oh, I think I have all the books over there. It's like why I said I do to marriage and I don't to wait. Why I said I don't to marriage and I do to me. That's it. Hate it.
Ooh.
But if I would have done a little bit more research around similar books, like maybe I would have chose a subtitle like A Love Story About Myself. That's a good subtitle. You know what I mean? I didn't have to be so like on the nose with it.
Yeah.
So it just, more information always helps. So just do that research. And I wish I would have done it before committing to it.
And
Can
so-
I add a little piece to that?
Sure.
So I really love what you said. I had a similar experience where I couldn't remember my subtitle. And I put in the chat, like when you write your book, make sure you read it because it's easy to forget the content. And it's a funny thing, but it's a human thing. It's like you're writing, but you're not the reader yet. You're the writer. So it's important to read the book. So Joy, do not feel bad. And then I just want to add one other thing. Wherever you are in your life at the time, writing, that's what's going to pour out of you. So it makes sense that that was your subtitle at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who you are now as a woman, you definitely have more information. You're going to produce something different just in each stage of life. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Janine.
I want to share. I agree with that. So just a little background, Joy and I went to journalism school together. And so I used to be a journalist and then I switched over to digital marketing. And at some point I looked up and it was like 8 years and I hadn't written anything, right? And so recently a friend reached out to me and she was like, you know, Alicia Keys is launching a wellness site and we need a piece about how to be there for a friend who lost a loved one. And that is, you know, where I am. And I was like, well, I haven't written anything in so long. I don't even know what this will look like. And the moment I sat down, it just poured out of me. And I just took a step back and I was like, wow, like that is true. And they say like, write what you know, or like where you are in that place. And I have been trying to write and trying to fill up a page, doing journal props for about a year or two. And I just wasn't consistent. But that, and this was about a month ago, was really kind of what made me realize like, okay, like I really can get back into this because writing is a muscle. But it's also very intimidating when you used to be at a certain place where you see yourself as a writer. You can write out 1,000 words in a certain time frame and you look up and you're like, I can't even get out a paragraph. So it's an interesting relationship with writing too, and the art of writing.
Wow.
That's a good point. It sort of brings us to, I want to move us along so that since we're like 10 minutes, and then I'll sort of open it up to questions, but brings us to my next point of after you know what your book is about, figure out what your word count is going to be. Sometimes, like let's just say you have an agent, sometimes your agent will already, you know, dictate that for you. I didn't have an agent, I still don't. So you can totally write a book unagented, it's possible. But sort of these are, in general, what word counts will be. So for a novel, for a memoir, nonfiction, 70 to 85,000. If it's sci-fi, historical horror, like the Game of Thrones books, right? You might get up to 120,000. Romance books, even celebrity memoirs, which is what I'm doing now, 60 to 90. And then the young adult to middle grade novels can be as low as 40,000 to 70,000. So once you sort of know what your goal is, for the book that I'm writing now, my goal is 60,000 words. I said, okay, now I know it's 60,000. Now let me create a writing schedule because I do have a full-time job. It is a pandemic. I don't have childcare. I have all these things. And so I needed to create a writing schedule for myself. So what does that look like, right? A writing schedule It's just as it sounds. It's sort of a guide for how much you should write per day or per week. So the best advice I ever received, because Danielle didn't tell this story. She telling me today, child. But when I first wrote my book, Danielle hit me up and she said, "Do you want to tell the story, Danielle? Because it's quite funny, but it's true."
Okay. So I texted Joy and I was like, hey, like, how did you even get to the process of like writing a book? How did you learn how to write a book? Did you like reach out to somebody? And she was like, "Girl, I just Googled how to write a book." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, okay.
The information is there. And along with Googling, I did talk to so many. I mean, the good thing about my job is I cover books. So I get the opportunity to talk to tons of writers, particularly this one writer who I feel like every one of us should know, if you don't know him already, is Jason Reynolds. And he writes a lot of young adult novels and middle grade novels. And he's from Maryland, where I'm from. We went to college together. But also he's like the National Library of Congress, like ambassador to young people, something like that. He's a big deal. And I remember when we first got to New York, I was always thinking about writing a book. And he's like, "Oh, let's get a coffee." I'm like, "Great." And at this point, he had already written 2 books. He now has 13. And I asked him, I said, "How do you write a book?" And he said, "The best advice I could ever give you is to only write 3 pages. On your computer, your Word document pages, only write 3 pages, no more, no less." He said, "Every day I get up, I have my cup of coffee, and I sit down and I write 3 pages. That's it." And I said, "Well, how long does that take you?" He's like, however long it takes you. But I don't do any more than that because I don't want to burn myself out. And I'm not even sure if he outlines or not. I have an outline that I go off of just to make sure I'm hitting all the marks. But every night after work, put the kid to bed, have my dinner, watch Wendy Williams, my favorite. And then I get to writing my 3 pages. And for me, I've marked out 3 pages is about 1,000 words. I can do that in about 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Some days I don't hit it. But that's always the goal when I sit down. And like this week, I was like, okay, I'll try to write 1,000 words per session 4 times a week. So by the end of the week, I'll have 4,000 words. If you 60 divided by 4, right? So in about 3 months, I should have 60,000 words if I commit to writing 4,000 words a week or 3,000 words a week. And so that's how you sort of break it down. Writing a book is not, you really want to make it small, just small, tiny steps. To get to the goal and not try to sprint there, because you will burn yourself out or you'll start to write things you hate. So write in manageable steps. And then Tanine says, right, when you have optimal energy. Yes. That is the goal, Joe. And I wish I could write during the day, but #life. But definitely make sure you're breaking your book writing down into manageable steps, manageable bites. And slowly but surely you'll get there.
Joy, does that also include like your timeline and your word count? Does it also account for any type of research that you may do?
No, unfortunately not. So on the days, that's a great question actually. So on the days so I decided to write 4 times last week. The 3 other days that I didn't, I use those evenings to watch old episodes for research, because I'm writing memoir. I'm ghostwriting for a person who's on TV. So watching old episodes. I'm reading past interviews. I'm looking at old YouTube clips, like anything to help. But no, it doesn't include that.
Okay.
That's a good question.
You actually sit down like that. You are just focusing on the writing part to hit that goal. Your research
Exactly.
comes outside of that.
Exactly. And I try to keep to it, even if I feel like, oh, I could keep going. Like last night, I was like, oh, I hit 1,000 under 2 hours. I was like 9:30, I was done. I started at 8. And I was like, oh, I could keep going. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm going to save my energy. I'm going to go watch Girlfriend. Like, because you just want to keep it's like you said, it's a muscle and you don't want to over extend it and get tired. And then, it's a cycle, right? If you overextend it today, you're going to be tired tomorrow. So for the weekends, I try not to write it all. Like today, no. Sunday is wash day, no. Like, you know, it's really during the week. I treat it like a job, because it is. So that's a great question. All right, so when you wanna, and I know we're sort of running into time, so I'm gonna rush through this so we have time for at least a few questions. When you wanna get your book published, definitely share your work. This does not mean start pitching. This literally means sending whatever you have, whether there's 20 pages, a chapter, 3 chapters, to a trusted editor, a trusted friend, a trusted colleague, just to share your work, so that you can get feedback, right? Like, feedback is an essential part of the writing process. Whether it's getting a sense of what people like, what people don't like. Maybe, is this character likable? Is it not? You just want to be open to feedback from a person that you trust. You obviously want to make sure that this person knows what they're talking about. Maybe it's another writer, another editor, like I said. Be open to it. But also, if you get the feedback and you're like, I feel you, but no, like, you just make sure you always trust yourself. Like, you're the ultimate judge. Your name is going to be on the work at the end of the day. So it's totally okay to sort of eat the meat and spit out the bones, as they say, to not take it. And then after that, once you get your feedback, let's just say you've incorporated it, then you want to go about selling yourself, right? And one of the ways you do that is by creating an author media kit. This is my actual media kit from back in the day. I think I made this in 2016. So it's old. It looked mad, dated. Don't judge me. But this is what I actually sent to Hachette, which is my publisher, to get them to believe that I could sell books. Because the reality right now in the publishing industry, they don't be selling nothing. They leave it up to the author to really use their network and their fan base to sell the book. So this was me saying what my reach was at the time. I was an entertainment journalist, so I said, okay, let me choose mostly white people that I've interviewed, because these publishers are mostly white. Let's be real, unless you're working with a Black publisher. But so this was my actual media kit. I not only included a bio, which was seen on this page, my bio, like a sample of my work, and then on this left page was sort of like clips that I had gotten. So I was sort of telling the publisher, hey, I can get press in these publications. And at the time, I also had a website, a blog called The Fab Empire. And so I put that sort of reach for the blog as well in there to show that I knew people, right?